Thanks so much for having me here. This is a great opportunity to communicate with voters. My number one priority as a father of three children is to defend and advance the right of parents to be the primary decision makers in the upbringing of their children, whether that be moral, religious, or in the case of education. That's a top focus for me. Number two, I think it's important that we provide security and law and order for our communities. We have a situation at our southern border that is a threat to that security, to that law and order. I want to make sure that people understand I'm the son of an immigrant. I speak Spanish. I grew up speaking English and Spanish. I think that immigration in a diverse society, legal immigration, is a great thing, and I'm for it. But we have to ensure that we have security in our communities. The federal government isn't getting that done. I believe Texas is, and will continue to do more to secure our southern border. My third priority is leaning on my background as an entrepreneur in the energy industry. We shouldn't have to worry about our electrical grid going down every summer when it gets hot. This is Texas. We know it's going to get hot. The reality is that we've had an overinvestment in resources, primarily driven by the weather, that are not reliable in those critical moments. I will be a steadfast advocate for investments in the reliable energy we need to make sure that in the future, we don't have to worry about that. We can crank up our air conditioning when we need it and still power our industries, our schools, our hospitals, and really the future of a free and prosperous Texas. I'm an entrepreneur by background. I know the business community, private enterprise, and private property is the foundation of a prosperous society. So this is critical to me, and I really bring that experience to our representation in Austin. I'm an energy professional by background, and that's a critical area of focus to me, but I want to make sure that people know I'm also someone who wants to listen and understand other industries that are increasing their influence in our society. I went from energy entrepreneurship to working at an industry association that advocates for cutting edge technology and making sure Texas is home to the innovation of the future, whether that be high performance computing or artificial intelligence or machine learning and some of these other disruptive technologies that we see. So I want to be an advocate for the business community, light touch regulatory environment. I'm pro innovation, pro private investment. I've got three young kids that are growing up here in Collin County. Public education is the backbone of our society. I think almost everybody can agree we want to be a place that attracts families. We're a family-oriented community. So first and foremost, I will support always increased investment in public education. I'm a big supporter of that. But here's what I want to make clear. In order to invest in public education, I want to make sure that that investment goes to the student. I think that we have a lot of phenomenal school districts. Plano ISD is doing a great job for a lot of people. I commend them for that. I want to be an ally for them. But first and foremost, I'm an ally for investing our resources as effectively as possible. I believe that's by investing in the student directly, where families and the community can come together and provide the best education option. I think that bringing that kind of competition and innovation is going to be a better education experience for everybody in Collin County, including the traditional schools. So I want to be an advocate for all parents. I want to make sure that parents feel empowered to be more involved in the education of their children and know that they are the primary decision makers, and I will always stand firm for them. Well, we have a unique position within that debate around the future of transportation because this district is actually home to part of the expansion in the DART rail line. I think that like many projects of that scale, there have been twists and turns along the way, most obviously the COVID pandemic. So we went from a swing and a pendulum where work from home was going to be universal and nobody's going to work in the office anymore. I think we all know that's not the case now. So we're learning together, I think, what that future of transportation looks like. First and foremost, my job is to listen to my constituents and see where the struggles are in terms of mobility in our community. I do want to make one thing clear. We have 3 toll roads that border most of this district, the George Bush, to the north of 121, and the Dallas North Tollway. I-75 is the only major highway that is not gate kept by tolls. I think it's really important that we keep it that way and make sure that that's a thoroughfare for mobility that we need in this community. So I'm always going to advocate for that. I want to be clear about that. But I don't think anyone knows where the future of transportation is going with autonomous vehicles, with the innovation around around different apps that can identify and best route different ways that we can arrive from point A to point B. So let's continue to listen. It's an iterative process. Let's be pro-innovation, and let's not just decide that the government will always be the solution. I want to know what the private sector can do. I'm more interested in that instead of projects that take 10, 15, and 20 years to come to fruition. So that's really my focus in terms of this issue of mobility. Yeah, we had an important constitutional amendment that passed recently to appropriate $1 billion to invest in water infrastructure. You're always going to hear me put a primary focus on how does the government have less of a role and a lot of the build out of infrastructure in our society, because I want the private sector to lead. However, when you have as many people moving to Texas as we've had in the last couple of years, the reality is that the water demand is going up and the government does have a role there. So I support that appropriation of $1 billion. I think it's important. I do think there's a state level kind of coordination of efforts that needs to take place, but I want to make sure that local communities lead first and we listen to them. I like to highlight and empower local leaders to figure out the best path forward. I think that the best way to make sure that our investments are effective is to have a market mechanism there that helps people save money if they're willing to consume less water at critical times. There's a difference between running your sprinkler on the hottest day when we're in the middle of a drought than on a pleasant day in spring when the lake is at a high level. The price should reflect that, and I think it'll incentivize the kind of behavior in a free market way that we need to better allocate our resources. I'm always going to figure out a way that we can make the investments we need to bring key industries that have high water demand, like semiconductors, because we need to lead in that area. But first and foremost, we got to make sure that retail water demand is met, that the citizens have their water needs met, and then we can work together to make sure we build the industries of tomorrow here in Collin County and in the surrounding areas. There's an area that we have to lead as Texas when it comes to the future, and that's semiconductor manufacturing and education. Those two are connected. If we don't have the workforce, we're never going to win in the global race to be the provider of semiconductor technology. We've made historic investments in that. The state of Texas has passed the Texas CHIPS Act. That's a $598 million appropriation to make Texas more competitive in the future of the semiconductor industry. Now, I've already said, I always tend to favor private sector innovation, private sector leading. But the reality is that over the past couple of decades, we've seen other countries, most notably Taiwan and South Korea, invest strategically in semiconductors, and now we're completely dependent on them. We have to make a change. Something I want to highlight for people is that law, the Texas CHIPS Act, named 19 universities, public universities in Texas, that are the centers of innovation for that strategic investment and form private-public partnerships. One of those is UTD. That's great. I love to see that in this district, and I'll always fight for that. I'm a big supporter of UTD and the impact they're having. But one thing I want to highlight is that Dallas College was on that list. Collin College wasn't. I want to be an advocate to make sure that Collin College is also a center of innovation for semiconductors, for these types of future industries that are going to be highly disruptive and form a base on which other industries can also innovate on top of. So that kind of workforce development, that kind of strategic investment is an area that I think we need to continue to talk about, and we probably need to grow that investment to make sure that we're positioning ourselves to be globally competitive. I think the number one thing that we have to continue to do is keep Texas, Texas. What's made Texas a center for economic development is our light touch regulatory environment, and first and foremost, our collaboration with the private sector to make sure that we have an environment where innovators can thrive. That's why people are coming here at the end of the day. So we need to continue to focus on that and be true to that vision. Alongside that, there are places where we have to make those strategic investments. I've highlighted semiconductors as a clear area where we need to do that. I think another area we can continue to have a discussion is energy. We have to make sure that industries that are coming here to invest in the economic development of tomorrow know that they're going to have the energy, the cheap, competitively priced energy that they need to build and invest here in Texas. We've had a long history of being a global energy leader. I think that right now we need to reassess the direction that we're going in because we have federal incentives coming into Texas that are making our electrical grid go in a direction that is increasingly precarious as we see higher and higher record demand during cold and hot weather events. We can fix that. We have the Texas Energy Fund that's been passed in this last legislature. I'm going to be a leader focused on making those investments to bring the cost of energy down. Higher energy costs is just another tax. Energy is a base input into the cost of everything else that we do, and it has a big impact on economic development. So an area that I have specific expertise and background in is this energy area. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to make sure that Collin County is a leader in having a strong electrical grid, the energy that we need to continue to attract companies and innovators to Collin County. I think it's really important in the time that we find ourselves in where it's easy to go to the negative. There's an incentive in the media particularly that's chasing clicks to highlight the negative, the combativeness, the falling out, the partisanship. And I understand that that's part of the political process. But something I want to highlight is that I have some past experience through the Texas Blockchain Council in advocating for a bill that passed in this last legislative session, House Bill 591, which was a consumer protection bill to make sure that cryptocurrency exchanges have to submit to the same kinds of disclosures that other exchanges submit to. And the reason I want to highlight that is because there was not one single no vote in the House of Representatives. We can do that. We can come together when we have common sense regulation that makes an industry work better for all Texans. Now, most people probably haven't heard of House Bill 591. I'm proud of that. I have that kind of background and experience, and I'll continue to seek out ways that we can have a bipartisan collaboration to deliver those kinds of good results that bring Texans together and make our future more free and more prosperous.